Welcome, everyone. Welcome. I'm glad you like the music, Laura. Me too. This is an album by a music friend of ours called So Called. But here I'm going to bring us into this moment in time, sort of. Lishana hamba, Lishana hamba, Lishana hamba Yerushalayim, Lishana hamba, Lishana hamba, Lishana hamba Yerushalayim, Lishana hamba, Lishana Yerushalayim, Lishana hamba, Lishana Yerushalayim. Tell me in the chat, is this the melody that you grew up with? Lishana hamba, Lishana hamba, Lishana hamba Yerushalayim, Lishana hamba, Lishana hamba, Lishana hamba Yerushalayim, Lishana hamba, Lishana Yerushalayim, Lishana hamba, Lishana Yerushalayim.
Hi, friends. Good evening from Harlem, New York City. Shira is in Brooklyn. You all are all over the place geographically. And we are at our fourth and final prep session for SAYDER 2024 with a big question that Shira just sang for us next year in Jerusalem. In other words, what are we going to do at the end of the Seder? What do we usually do at the end of the Seder? We even get to the end of the Seder. And then what is the intentionality with which we leave? On any given year, Seder is an opportunity for collective optimism and for family, friends, community. It is often fraught and it is often beautiful, and a combination of them all, like a big matzo ball. This year, we all know that there's a lot going on, that there are people who find it difficult to sit together. There are families across generations, and there are friends, and there are relatives for whom this coming Passover is different than all other Passovers because we might choose or we might find it difficult to sit around the same table and tell the same story. And so this year, we decided to invite us all into a prep series, 4 sessions. This is the fourth, with Seder, our insert, 4 new questions for how to bring this time, this conflict, our questions into Seder. So we don't fight or fight less, but we also read less from the Haggadah that was never meant to be read cover to cover, and ask new questions that help us elevate this moment in a deep way and help us come together with some hope. This is a ritual, as Anita Diamond taught us, about collective optimism. So tonight we're going to look at the fourth question, how we end the Seder. Aspirational, future. We started off with a song about Elijah. We opened the door to Elijah, the prophet. It is part of the messianic trope in Jewish mythology that wherever we are right now, there is a future. Wherever we were, we are going forward. There's always something to look forward to. And the Elijah song is one thing that happens, etc. And then at the very end, the Passover Haggadah, that in its format right now is roughly 1,000 years old, which is and is not old in the Jewish tradition, ends with these words. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim habnuya. Next year in Jerusalem, which is a symbol for everything that we are aspiring to, a city of peace, an idea, an ideal, a hopeful something. So in a moment, Shira and I are going to introduce you to our guests tonight, who, because one of them is in Tel Aviv and the other is in Geneva at the moment, because there are two peacemakers who are on the work in the trenches for peace. We're going to be inviting them via pre-recorded Zoom that Shira and I had with Libby and Mushon earlier this week, and we'll tell you more about them in just a moment. But the question that both Libby and Mushon engaged with us is a futurist question. What does it mean to end the Seder with thinking forward? We're thinking future. We're thinking next year in fill in the blank. Next year in what do we want for the future? What do we want to wishful think into the future, especially this year? And then after we're going to hear it's about a half-hour conversation with Mushon and Libby that moved us all to tears, and I'm sure it will move you to tears as well. We're going to break into small groups for about 10 minutes for you asking your questions about what do you want to end your Seder with. And then our friend David Broza is joining us live to give us his version of what's the song he's going to end Seder with this year, because he's one more peacemaking futurists. So that's our plan. We're ending this 4-part series that we began with Ma Nishtana, and I'm going to end L'Shana Haba. We're hopeful that this is helpful to you. So before we're going to play the video, Amanda, thank you for holding our virtual space. If you don't mind sharing on screen the 4 questions, the document that we'll also share in the chat, and you can all download from our website and use it in as easy a way as you can to make sure that you bring meaning into your Seder. So just to review, number 1, Ma Nishtana, you begin the Seder with asking, how are we different this year? However you can, you go around the table, you turn to each other, because we're different this year. And with all the tensions, we feel that's a good way to begin a Seder. Honestly, acknowledge transparently that we're holding a lot, and it's complicated. And we're here to be with and for each other. And then we're going to move into the second question, which is Avadim Hayinu. We had our beautiful storytellers with us to help us think vertically about how do we tell the story differently this year? What about this story of narrowness and expansiveness, about oppressor and oppressed, of collective trauma? What are we bringing this year to really help us deal and heal? Which brings us to the third question, which we did just last week, which was Dayenu, enough. How do we interrupt the cycles of trauma? In what ways in our bodies, with our voices, with our stories, can we not keep telling the stories of suffering, but start figuring out a new path, which now we know we really must? And that's bringing us to the fourth and last question, with which we end Seder with a fourth cup, opening the door to the future and asking next year in what Jerusalem represents. And before we even go to the video, and I think we said it in the video, for many, many generations, obviously Jerusalem was just a vision of hope for all of our ancestors in diasporas all over the world for 2,000 years. But now it's real. And so the challenge of power, challenge of sovereignty, the challenge of what Jerusalem could become, not just built, but built as a home of peace for all people, is really what is going on here. That's part of our question. Next year in fill in the blank. So with that, Shira, anything I've skipped before we want to get into our conversation with Michelle?
Well,
Like
you know, in each of these sessions, we've been grounding a little bit into just what what did you grow up with or not grow up with, but like, we would love to hear, Amichai, you and I will talk for just a second now about, when you were growing up, like, how did the Seder end? Like, what was the final scene when you were coming up? And please feel free to write your answers into the chat also. Like in my family, it was a hearty Seder, a long, long Seder. And the conversation was thick and deep, and there was always like a crazy mix of people, and sometimes like news people, because we're the rabbi's family in Monroe, Louisiana. So we had, we had, our table was a very mixed uh, bag every year. And at the very end, when really like 4 cups of wine had truly flowed, like that was real. We sang for like 45 minutes every single song in the back of the Haggadah. So if we didn't read the whole thing, we sang the whole thing at the end, like all of those crazy songs. And we just got crazier and more dramatic. And then we would sing the Shana Haba'as line. And I honestly think we never questioned it. Like it really was like a spell that was just simple. I don't remember singing the words Habanuya, the rebuilt part. And I hope you'll translate that, because I know that what's coming is there's some, there's going to be some Hebrew speaking. There's going to be a couple like glossary vocabulary words that need to go into the chat as you hear them. If you hear them, Amichai and I will translate as they come up. But that's a part of this text. The Lishana Haba'a, next year, may we be in Jerusalem, Habanuya. Like, we don't have a lot of time for this, but can you just, in a nutshell, do you want to say what that refers
Yeah.
to?
So again, the Haggadah went through a lot of modifications, and it may have originally been L'Shana Abba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. Just the desire, oh my God, can we be back home after all those
Hmm.
years of exile? And then eventually it became Habnuya, Jerusalem, which is rebuilt. Rebuilt as in it was in ruins, rebuilt as in the temple, rebuilt as in sovereignty, rebuilt as I don't want to get political, but rebuilt as everything that we know what happens when a city is not built. We want it built. And so I will say on that, as many of you know, I grew up in Israel and had many Seders in Jerusalem, and our very Orthodox Zionist long Seder ended with L'Shana Ba B'Yerushalayim, L'Shana Ba B'Yerushalayim Abnuya, Shana Ba. It was very clear. By the time we got there, we're like, whoo! And my father, rest in peace, was a Holocaust survivor. It was moving. Like we went through emotional ups and downs through the years. I have not done Seder with my family of origin except for once of over 25 years out of my choice. I wanted to create my own abridged version and I wanted to challenge some of the narratives. But we for sure ended with that and it was a big sign of it took it all up. It was very aspirational in its real way
Hmm.
of lifting up. And my political approaches to the occupation and to Israel's future, etc., that's when I started figuring out that I got to reinterpret this in ways that will make me look at some of this as metaphor. So
Hmm.
tonight, this year, 2024, as we're thinking about what Jerusalem can be and should be as a source of love and light onto others, or we're thinking of Israel and Palestine, we're thinking of this country, we know that there's a lot we want to wish for in the future. And the gap between being here in the present and thinking future is part of what this intriguing conversation is about. And so we're going to invite you in just a moment to hear from two beautiful people. The first is Libby Linkinski, who's a LabShuler and a dear friend, and is the vice president of public engagement at the New Israel Fund, and is on the line, Israel, America, now Europe, nonstop. She's also the founder and president of ALBI, which is a new fund she created with others, an institute and lab built to power culture change in and about Israel, Palestine. And we're putting the info in the chat. We just did. Libby, thank you so much for being here with us I think I see you there, but you're in Europe, so it's the middle of the night. And Libby said, you got to bring Mushon. So we fell in love with him. You will too. Mushon Zel Aviv is a designer, researcher, educator, media activist in Tel Aviv, and he's one of the founding principles of A Land for All, Eretz Lekulam, which is a shared movement of Israelis and Palestinians who believe that the only way forward towards peace, security, stability for all includes a two independent state idea, Israel and Palestine with joint framework. He'll tell us more about it and we'll share the links. These are two futurists who are not just here, but thinking forward how we can have the life we all deserve. So honored and grateful for Libby and Mushon joining us. We're going to listen to them for about a half hour. Open your hearts, sit down and enjoy, take notes. We're going to come back, go into small breakout rooms to talk about our own response to this question of next year. And then David Broza is going to serenade us into the wrap up of this session. All right. Here we go.
We are so very grateful to be here with you and to have some of your time and to just invite you into this journey with us of the 4 new questions for this year's Passover. Libby and Mushran, we want to meet you and we want to introduce you, the major gift of introducing you to our community. And some of us know a little bit about you and some of us not at all. So tell us where you're zooming in from today and tell us a little bit about how are you doing?
Hi, thank you so much, Shira, and thanks, Rabbi Amichai. I'm Libby. I'm zooming in today from Bedside, Brooklyn. I'm an Israeli American activist and a member of the LabShul community, so thank you so much for including me today. The work that I do is for the last 20 something years is to kind of adapt and translate Israeli realities of opposition to racism, to the occupation, to authoritarianism here to American audiences, and then also to translate and adapt American movement and political and Jewish realities back to the Israeli progressive left. And over the years, I've found a lot of open doors, but I've also found a lot of stuckness in terms of anyone's ability to imagine, to actually imagine a better future next year. The weight of the present and the weight of the past is so heavy on all of us, both with like intentional mechanisms to shut down our ability to imagine a truly better future, and also our own internalized systems for shutting that down out of self-protection. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing lately is looking at cultural vehicles that can help us get unstuck. And to your question of how am I, I'm terrible right now. It's been 6 months of like the worst, heaviest times that I can remember in my lifetime, that my parents can remember in their lifetimes. And I'm trying very hard, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit more, like as we head towards Pesach, to find new ways of using the pain and terror that I'm feeling in my bones every day when I wake up as a template for how to really think clearly and feel clearly about a shared future. How like that pain and terror can actually be a source of deepened connection to other peoples, to our neighbors, in a realer and more visceral way than I think I've had to channel in the past. So thanks for the question, and that's how I am.
Yeah,
Libby, thank you.
can definitely relate to that. Hi, I'm Mushon Zeraviv. I'm connecting today from Tel Aviv. It's a beautiful, beautiful day in Tel Aviv. You know, it seems like the weather doesn't know about what is going on. And a bit about me, I'm a designer, and I'm always coming back to that title, as a designer, because I want to be able to design my environment. It's getting harder, and it seems like the tools that I've been using have not been delivering the results that I was designing for. And I come back to the question of like, what have we not understood about the environment? What have we not understood about where we want to take it? And by environment, I mean both, the physical environment, the social environment, and about where we want to take this. It's not about only our imagination, but also how we work with imagination. Like how do we use the future? I'm as an activist, I work with Land for All, which is a peace initiative. We want to initiate peace. We still believe that there's room for that, and there have been so much cynicism over the past decades about that word, that there's so much work to be done. There has been so much work done to cancel the futures that we were hoping for. And you mentioned you mentioned ideas of optimism. I'm not an optimist. I'm actually a pessimist. I don't think that it's going to get better, but I'm a hopeful pessimist, which means that I have hope and I demand of myself and of people around me to be able to see the hope, because the trajectory is not an optimistic one. We've been, every year we say, LeShana HaBa'a BiYerushalayim HaBnuya. We don't actually spend enough time to think, what does it require of us? So it's kind of a shallow, optimistic statement. If we want to make it a hopeful statement, we need to break that down to, okay, you've been saying that every year. What are you going to do differently this year? And what do you mean by Yerushalayim HaBnuya? This year I want to say LeShana HaBa'a LeAza HaBnuya. And what would that require?
Tell us more. What does that mean? Can you translate that for our community?
We are not the ones. And I'm saying we from my Israeli collective, we are responsible for the destruction of Gaza. We're not, this year, we need to be responsible not for the building of Jerusalem, but for first of all, stop the destruction of Gaza. First of all. And then, if we ever want to build Jerusalem, what would it require? Like, if we look at our environment, and I'm using my tools as a designer. When I'm looking at the environment, like what needs to change in this environment to be able to start building? And the first thing that we need to start building is trust.
I mean, if I can say something, when Mushon talked about like the tools that I'm using aren't delivering the outcomes that I want, I very much relate to that. And one of the tools that I've been reaching for in cultural activism is futurism. And it's like the sense that if we can actually experience and imagine this better future b'shana ba'a, next year or next 20 years, then that will help us get there. And one of the things that Mushon has warned of in his writings and also in conversations with me is like that there is this this dynamic that happens around futurist thinking, which absolves us of the practical and actually puts us in a deeper hole. And after I heard Mushon say that the first time, I started thinking about a set of like nostalgic iconic cultural pieces, like David Broza's Yeh Tov, or like the Shana Ba'a B'Yerushalayim from the SAYDER, or I recently saw a Batsheva dance performance of 2019 where a woman is singing עוד תראה כמה טוב יהיה בשנה הבאה. And she's just like straight face singing it. And I sobbed my heart out because what it felt like to me is that in our tradition, in the Jewish collective and in the Israeli collective, it's like things get worse and we start praying about next year, a year that is completely unreachable. And the more we say it, the more out of reach it becomes. And so one of the challenges that Mushon has put to me and that I've like really internalized, maybe more than you intended it, is like, as we're imagining this better future, and if I'm looking at Israel-Palestine, which I'm always looking at with my heart and my eyes and my feet and my hands, if we're imagining a time in which separation and militarism is not the paradigm, but partnership and shared space and shared culture is the paradigm, then where can we see the saplings, like the seeds of that already in our environment now, so that it isn't עוד תראה, or יהיה טוב, or בשנה הבאה, but actually building from what is now, so that we're not skipping over all of that responsibility, all of that evidence towards some utopian future that we'll never reach, but actually looking at the past, the present, to reach this future of partnership and shared present as well.
Let me build on that quickly. There's so much of the image, we talk about images of the future. There are so many images of the future that are built as a way of showing us what we don't have, right? And these images are, you know, the most popular images of the future that we actually spend a lot of time thinking about are dystopias, right? And often, you know, we think about 1984 or The Handmaid's Tale, and we think of these as iconic political statements and images of the future that are kind of warning signals. And indeed, they are. Like they show us like how worse it can get. But they do another thing. They emphasize the things that we have and we stand to lose. And in a way, dystopias function as this. I call it the reactionism of the future, like make the future present again, right? Like how can we keep what we have? Like just and in a way they're so powerful because we know what we have, and we know what we like about our lives and how it would be horrible to live without it. It's really easy to, you know. Cognitive scientists have been talking about that for so long that it's so easy for us to imagine how we stand to lose something rather than stand to gain, right? and that and the flip side of that is this utopian images that we hardly, we hardly really delve into. We make these statements like "L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim Habnuya," and we keep it at that, because there's something kind of static about there's something not exciting about all our problems get solved, and somehow we actually, what excites me the most is to solve problems, to find new opportunities, to understand the environment differently, to move differently in the environment. It's not necessarily about that reaching that Yerushalayim Habnuya, but it's definitely about getting there, right? There's a quote that let me pull it up quickly, and hopefully it will be quick enough. But there's a quote that I keep coming back to, by Eduardo Galeano about utopia, and I do hope that I have it handy. Well, I'll try to remember it by heart, because maybe I found it. Yes. So she's on the horizon. I go 2 steps, she moves 2 steps away. I walk 10 steps, and the horizon runs 10 steps ahead. No matter how much I walk, I'll never reach her. What good is utopia? That's what. It's good for walking. And we should stop saying "Shana B'Yerushalayim Habnuya" unless we mean we try to understand, because it's not in Jerusalem. It's not in Jerusalem, right? It's a symbolic state of building, right? Of building what? And then what is the direction, and how do we start walking there now?
Yeah. Wow, Mushon, thank you for this, and Libby for yours. This is real, and as you're talking about being a hopeful pessimist. I'm thinking about Viktor Frankl's tragic optimist. I think between being a hopeful pessimist and a tragic optimist, somewhere there is our yearning. It's certainly an old Jewish trope, but a human trope of saying, I'm here, there's a part of me that's over there. How can it be the most optimistic, but also not being rose-eyed, but somewhere between the hopeful pessimist and the tragic optimist is, I think, where we are now finding ourselves so much more than ever. And I'm hearing the being aspirational, but being practical. Makes me think about a very short teaching, Talmudic, I believe, that if you are out there and you're planting a tree in a ti'ah, and you see the Mashiach is coming, the Messiah is arriving, finish planting, then go hug the Messiah. Right? So it's like Libby was saying, the seeds right now. Yes, utopia. Next year, Yerushalayim Habnuya, I'm thinking about the generations and generations of our ancestors who have said it. Right? In good times and bad times, with the doors shut for fear of the others and with the windows wide open in different countries at different ages. I think Yerushalayim is always a metaphor. And now the challenge for our generation is it's not just a metaphor. It's a real city with major problems and so much to build, not physically necessarily, but from the ground up, a new vision. So I want to, in just a moment, ask you both, as you already have, to really imagine wherever you will be at SAYDER or SAYDERs this year. And when you get to that question and get to reframe it, what are you going to say? The Shana Haba, a sentence or two. I'm going to ask everyone else who's watching this to think the same. So we are practical at SAYDER. This is like a practical exercise. Anita Diamond talks about Pesach as a exercise of collective optimism. I think this year maybe we'll call it an exercise in collective tragic optimism. But nevertheless, with an eye of Kadima. But if it's okay, I want to take I want to ask Mushon, if you don't mind, for just a few moments, tell us about Eretz Lekulam, about Elen Fall, because I think if we're talking about real plants on the ground, brave and courageous and creative, that's one of them. And I know I don't know enough about it, and I'm sure others would be so honored to hear from you, who's one of the founding visionaries of it. What's there? Like, tell us more.
I'm not one of the founding visionaries of it, and I'm proud to say I'm not, because the way that I got convinced by the idea was through a project that I made that was quite literally trying to imagine what are we going to build in Jerusalem, right? So in 2017, Shalev Moran and myself launched a project called Speculative Tourism, where we invited different authors from really different parts of Israel to imagine different futures for Jerusalem, and to write them and record them in the format of an audio tour that we actually conducted in the streets of Jerusalem, where we stood in the places where these futures may happen, and we heard them while our eyes were in the present and our ears were in the futures. And one of these futures was by Muhammad Beiruti and Meron Rappaport from Elen for All, when I was familiar with Elen for All, but still very, very skeptic. And that future took place in one of the most contested places in the city. It was in Silwan, the village of Silwan, or Ir David, and specifically the archaeological site in Silwan. And in the future that they described, this is still an archaeological site, but rather than being a place where Jews dig proofs for annexation, to justify annexation, this becomes a shared archaeological site where both Jews and Arabs dig their shared histories together. I tear up again just to think about that being the Jerusalem that I would want to see. And I was convinced from that vision. And to expand on that, A Land for All doesn't give up on the two-state solution, but gives up on the concept of separation at the heart of the way we've been conducting it so far. So it's not about finding how to cut and slice this land. It's about thinking of how to share it, how to have two states, two independent states with the right of self-determination in the same land that we call our home. And we call all of it our home. Like, it's not a surprise that both pro-Palestinians and pro-Israelis are using the same app. I'm a map maker, that's what I do. And I've been looking at this map since I was a kid, trying to figure out, like, where is my home? Where is this place that I'm supposed to say it is mine? And half of my family are settlers, and the other half is mixed. And specifically this Passover, we're going to be with my cousin in Neve Shalom, right? The very other side of the family, and you know, we're going to have these gestures of like Neve Shalom is a small capsule of what would it look like to live together. and to still maintain the fact that we're different and we have different identities and different parts to play in our communities. I think unlike the hopes of many in the world, more than actually in Israel and Palestine, many in the world really hope to make Israel and Palestine the forefront of post-nationalism. That sounds beautiful, but this is another one of these futures that are hanging over there. As here's another thing that we have no idea, and we are not even committed in any way to step towards. No, we need to bring future to us, and we need to start walking. So, and this is not even a compromise. A land for all means that Israelis and Palestinians will have each will have their own state, but they will not be kicked out of their homes. They will not have to continue living in fear. The only thing that we built in Jerusalem is walls. Like, this is what the thing that we mean by Yerushalayim Abnuya. This is what we even meant by the two-state solution, right? More and more and more separation, more and more and more walls. No, building what we need to build is trust, and that is something to be hopeful for, and that's what we're trying to advance with the Land for All.
Wow, Mushon, toda. Thank you. I think you're getting us into this, the closing part of this conversation about concrete ways of say LaShana BAA. I just want to share with you briefly that Silwan is contested, ancient, the core of Jerusalem, and so much of that area is from that neighborhood. I just came back from Israel Palestine last week, and I'm staying in Jerusalem, and there's a new bridge that was erected over Gay Ben Hinnom, over Silwan, by the Jerusalem municipality from Abu Tor to Mount Zion. And it's like a bridge between east and west and overlooking Silwan. And it's exactly what a bridge should be and exactly what a bridge is not, right? It is a tourist attraction to really celebrate one side and doesn't address the other, and it's overlooking this whole valley, but it doesn't serve the locals, and it's such a symbol of the irony, the bridges we want to build, the trust we want to build, the new vistas we want to build, and the reality of what is now. So from this place of tragic optimism, your seder in Neve Shalom, Libby, your seder's in Tel Aviv?
No, upstate New York.
Upstate New York. So I want to invite you both to really share with us, based on this really heart-moving conversation and dare I say, seeds of hope. What's your vision? What will you share or invite your people at Seder to think of next year, a year from now? Give us a vision. What are you seeing? What do you want? Forget reality for a moment. Libby, wanna go there?
Yes, I wish I could forget reality even for a moment. I think when I heard Mushon say that his Seder, and this is the second time he's told me that the Seder is going to be in Neve Shalom, Wahat al Salam, Oasis of Peace, I think is the name in English. In my years of activism, I have had a big change of heart, and it's connected to exactly what we're talking about, and it's connected to what I want to bring to my Seder this year. I used to think that these kind of like ex-territorias that we have in Israel-Palestine, these oases of peace that are non-representative of the actual political or spatial reality, but exist. I used to think of it as like the soft core. And I used to think that the hardcore was when I was protesting and breathing tear gas and facing off with settlers and soldiers for what's right. And over the years, I've come to see these oases of peace as the most radical expression of the world that we want, as the most radical expression of activism. You know, after October 7th, and I think I've told you this before, Amichai, on October 7th, the first people that texted me, like the way I found out what was going on was two Palestinian friends texting me to find out if my nieces were alive. They live in Tel Aviv. So one of my friends, Isa in Hebron, and one Tamil in Lod, both were like among the first in the first half hour of me waking up to this reality of October 7th. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I have these friends. And then as the months have gone on and the conversations have gotten harder between people, and even in very close relationships of many years, and especially between Israelis and Palestinians and between Jews and Arabs, I've had some very deep conversations with Palestinian friends where we kind of, in the very personal, promised each other that we wouldn't leave each other. Like, this is hard. We don't know where it's going, but we're not leaving each other. And then I like hang up the phone and go back to work. And now, as we go towards Passover and as as we're having this conversation, it to me doesn't feel like a random thing or like a kind of cute anecdote that I'll be talking to my Palestinian friends on that day, as I do every day, and that Mushon will be doing the Seder in Neve Shalom, Wahat al Salam, Oasis of Peace, because in order to reach the shared future that Land for All is talking about, that I'm working towards, we actually have to practice it every day. We have to be in that reality now and keep ourselves open to being in that ex territoria now, while it's only an ex territoria, so that it can become the guiding principle. And if we hang back from that this year and say it's too hard now is the time to circle the wagons, just me and other people who are exactly like me, because I'm in too much pain and I'm too scared. And so, hey, Tamer, that's all good. Let's talk next year. We'll never get there. It's a practice. It's something you've taught me, Amichai, about our spirituality. Like, you show up. It's a bad day, you still show up. You practice it, and then it becomes a spiritual reality. And so too with this politic, we have to practice it, and we have to start practicing it not tomorrow, yesterday. ואז יהיה טוב, ואז נגיע לשנה הבאה, through practice. And so, you know, Chag Sameach to you in Neve Shalom, that's actually like a Hagshama Atzmit, like it's a self-realization of the actual work that you're doing. And that's what I would bring to my Seder. Let's figure out how we practice it now so that it becomes our reality.
So I'll build on that, and inspired by the way you framed it. I'll still trying to say, I'll take it back to the other part of my family, the part that lives in Karnei Shomron, in a bunch of other, hills that have names that they just thought about recently, right? And I would say I would want to bring Neve Shalom there. Because Neve Shalom should not be the anomaly. And I can tell you on a hopeful note, I met with one of my cousins from the other side of the family, where it's really a bad idea to even start talking about politics. And of course, we immediately started talking about politics. And And it was after a couple of weeks after October 7th, he was in uniform. Um, and at some point I told him, Ori, you have to understand, I'm not trying to kick you out of your home. I'm not trying to kick you out of your home. I am fighting for something different, something that allows you to acknowledge the connection that you have to this land, even if it's different than mine, even if my connection is mainly to Tel Aviv, right? I acknowledge the fact that you have a spiritual connection to this land, and it should not be something that requires you to cancel somebody else's deep connection to this land. And we did an event recently, an online event, and the title we used is that war is the greatest failure of the imagination. I think what we have now is a failure of the imagination. And the failure of the imagination is not only about imagining, something nice to say every year and not mean it. It's about imagining how do we navigate that very, very treacherous terrain and keep navigating and keep walking.
Amen.
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 Haverot, Haverim, friends, I'm so moved by this, by the walking, by the reminder that hope is a muscle, that we get to create and plant oases of peace with this work.
Thinking of seeds of trust also, beyond seeds of hope.
Yeah. And that on Friday nights, we sang, Shira and I just did Kabbalat Shabbat, our Sabbath Queen ritual here in New York, and we sing from Lecha Dodi, go, walk, lover, towards the vision of love, Sof Maaseh B'machshava Tchila. The actions begin with our thoughts. These are the seeds of trust and rebuilding a future that we want to be in a year from now, that we want to start building right now. So many ways to specify these visions. I know those will emerge as we continue talking this evening, as all of us take this into SAYDER and beyond SAYDER, into many, many nights and days of liberation. We want to thank you, both of you, for doing what you're doing with A Land for All, and just by being there in Tel Aviv, Mushon, and doing everything you are to design reality better. And Libby, for your tireless work with Israel Fund and with Albi and with so many other ways of seeing the visions through day by day.
And thank you both.
You guys.
Thank you, Rabbi, for holding us all, not just during this time, but always, and for holding me in this time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Happy holiday.
Or something.
שנה הזאת, הכי בשלום שאפשר. השנה הבאה, all the better that we can co-create.
Keep walking.
Keep walking. We walk together.
We walk together. תודה. חג חירות ואהבה. להתראות. Wow. Woo. Friends, I invite us all to take a deep breath and extra exhale. Really powerful to watch this. Again, to hear Mushon and Libby. Keep walking. We've been in touch since the conversation was recorded on Monday. There's been a lot of texts and feels about this conversation, but we want you to have this conversation moving on. So what we're going to do now for just really 10 minutes in small breakout rooms, We want to invite you to reflect briefly on what you heard, bring it to your Seder. But there's a really, the question we want to ask you is, how do you want to end your Seder? What's the futurist thinking you want to bring into the end of your Seder? How do you translate or adapt or use LaShana Haba Yerushalayim Abnuya next year, the rebuilt Jerusalem? What will that mean to you as the future begins now? Does that sound like a good question to ponder in small groups? Yeah. So Amanda, thank you for, there's about 22 of us, other than us. Why don't you break into groups of 3 or even 4? We're gonna come back in 10 minutes. So this is a brief conversation, maybe even groups of 2, actually. They'll give you more time to talk. And then David Broza is joining us to help wrap tonight. Friends, I invite us all to take a deep breath and extra exhale. Really powerful to watch this. Again, to hear Mushon and Libby. Keep walking. We've been in touch since the conversation was recorded on Monday. There's been a lot of texts and feels about this conversation, but we want you to have this conversation moving on. So what we're going to do now for just really 10 minutes in small breakout rooms, we want to invite you to reflect briefly on what you heard, bring it to your Seder. But there's a really, the question we want to ask you is, how do you want to end your Seder? What's the futurist thinking you want to bring into the end of your Seder? How do you translate or adapt or use LaShana Haba Yerushalayim Abnuya next year, the rebuilt Jerusalem? What will that mean to you as the future begins now? Does that sound like a good question to ponder in small groups? Yeah. So Amanda, thank you for, there's about 22 of us, other than us. Why don't you break into groups of 3 or even 4? We're gonna come back in 10 minutes. So this is a brief conversation, maybe even groups of 2, actually. They'll give you more time to talk. And then David Broza is joining us to help wrap tonight. See you in a few minutes. Amanda, if you can stop spotlighting me just for now, that would be good.
Table talking about moving beyond, out of that place that closes you in, and I guess doing the walk from there.
Nice. Moving out of the narrow places towards what we heard Mushon said, keep walking. Thank you. Thank you. And we'll hear from one more of you. How do you imagine now having your Seder end? Daniel?
I was really struck by what Libby said about her making the pledge to her Palestinian friends to stay connected. And that's the note I want to end my Seder on, is to stay connected, to keep staying connected across differences, where of keep reaching to to keep the relations paramount, no matter how difficult the discourse gets, as a important step to building trust and bringing the future now.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. So, David, we heard just two of the many thoughts that are going around people's heads and hearts right now. How do we end this year's Seder? Whether it's L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim Habnuya. I want to invite you, first of all, thank you so much for joining us, for taking time. You've been back and forth, and you've been in Israel nonstop, making a lot of healing for a lot of people. But where are you going to be for Seder? Or Seders, and how are you going to end it? What are you going to sing at the end? And you want to unmute. David, unmute.
I'm gonna be with family, with my youngest son Adam has a house up in the country, upstate, and we're gonna get in a car and go there. And it's the first time he's hosting the Seder, so it's gonna be fun, interesting. And how are we gonna end it? With a guitar, songs of hope. But I also, it resonates what was just said, and what Libby, which I wasn't at the conversation, but the idea of maintaining communication with everybody that you love, whether they're Israeli, Palestinian, left, right, no matter what. It's very difficult, but it's really important. And as you all know, 10 years ago, I to show how it's possible to build a bridge of understanding and tolerance with the help of music. I did my project East Jerusalem, West Jerusalem, and I brought the great Steve Earle, great American singer-songwriter, to be the producer and actually be the middleman, just if and when we came upon obstacles that we wouldn't be able to get through in order to record a song. Nothing ever like that ever happened, because we're all musicians and we all come to be together for the purpose of making music together. But the thing is that, and I've been out there in East Jerusalem for a good 26 or 27 years, constant journey. And I did wonder to myself a couple of weeks into the October 7th horror, how am I going to maintain my communication with my Palestinian friends? And it turns out that they were thinking the same about how do they maintain communication with me and with mine. And it's been not only easy, it's been just like blessed moments where we just look at each other, hug each other. They roll a cigarette. I pour a glass of wine. We have food. We talk. We commiserate. Each one talks about his worries and his obstacles, his problems, and our mutual problems of, not being able to pass on the message at large to our people at this point. And I mentioned something about that as we started this meeting, about the difficulty of even mentioning or insinuating towards peace, or using the word peace on any capacity in shows. Now, I'm taking you now a little bit of a journey, and this is a long-winded answer because the short-winded is saying next year in Jerusalem, of course. And the question is what? East Jerusalem, West Jerusalem, or a little bit of both. But the whole purpose of maintaining this communication, and our wish is that the day after, as our governments don't have any plans for the day after, we know that the day after, that's when our work begins. The getting together and pulling in children. I prefer to work with young people, not youth, like with 5-year-olds to 15, before they become full-bodied youth who ransack the streets and get arrested. I'd rather catch them between the age of 5 and 15 so they don't get caught too young, and give them tools in their hands with which they can develop their personalities. And that is, per se, music, which is what I pass on to them. All these kids, like in the Shuafat refugee camp, My my hope and my belief is, as hard as it may be, is that, and there I went to the quote that I never really use it, but now I do. That not using peace as the ultimate and ongoing wish that we should all hope for. It's like denying a newborn having his mother's milk. This is the essence of life. Whether we know how to get to it in a straight line, or we have to go a roundabout, or do Joshua's trick of going 7 times around the walls before they fall down. And I'm talking now the walls of the spirit of man. It can be long, it can be short. I mean, in Ireland, it took over 300 years to come to a compromise. There's been the 700-year wars. There've been the 100-year war now in the Middle East for 5 years. Eventually, wars wear people down, and some miracle happens. Hopefully, our miracle will come within the next weeks, and certainly within this year. So next year in Jerusalem, for sure. But do stop in Tel Aviv before you go to Jerusalem.
Inshallah.
So we're closing. Oh, the host video.
You're all good. Yes.
All right. So Amichai, you want me to do Yetov? You think that's the one for the right one? Yeah.
Whatever you feel is the right song for this to end this year's SAYDER, that's the one, my friend. Yetov, I now know, was the first song that you composed. And take it away.
Yeah, okay. I'll do that, because that really does sum up everything. Shira, you can signal to me if it sounds like it's okay. Yeah? אני מביט מהחלון, וזה עושה לי די עצוב. האביב חלף בעבר, מי יודע אם ישוב. הליצן היה בסדר, הנביא היה ליצן, ושכחתי את הסדר, אבל אני עוד כאן, יהיה טוב, כן, אם אני נשבע. אז הלילה, אני נשאר. ילדים לובשים כנפיים, מעצים את הצבא, אחרי שנתיים, ללא תשובה, אנשים חיים במתח, מחפשים בלנשום, ובאים מדברים על השלום, ויהיה טוב, יהיה טוב. עד הלילה, הלילה, כן שם למעלה, בשמיים, עננים לובים לעוף, ואני לובים למעלה, לברם הטוב. ממשלה של גנרלים מחלקת את הטוב ושלהם ולשלנו, מתי נראה את הטוב? עוד איך שמחתי לטוב, פתאומים בעיניים ושלום ונפתח ואמרנו היי, ויהיה כמו אחים, ואז הוא אמר קדימה, אז תצאו מהשטחים, ויהיה I want to try to choose which verse to close this song with, but I will dare take this one, saying, and I'll translate now, that we shall learn to live together under the olive trees, and that children will grow up, no more wars, no terror, no frontiers, and that fresh new grass will grow over the graveyards for love and peace. After 100 years of war, we haven't and will not lose hope. עוד נלמד לחיות ביחד בין חופשות הציידים, ילדים יחיו בפחד, בגבולות בלי מפלט. לא אבדה התקווה, אז הלילה, הלילה, מהחלום אולי מגיע, 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 יום חדש. What do you say? Next year in Jerusalem? Nabab Yerushalayim? Yeah. All right. Did it work?
David, next year beyond all obstacles, next year beyond screens to be together, next year with visions of better. Thank you for being a tireless visionary for better, through music
sure.
and activism in all the ways you are. Mamash, mamash toda. Deeply thank you. You're helping us bring this series to a close with the two words that matter most, Yeh Tov. It's going to be okay. It's going to be better. It already is so much full of blessings in the middle of so much hardship. So with that, thank you, David. Thank you, Amanda. Sheila, thank you for being an awesome partner on this project. I know you just listed in the chat all the people who've been our artists and teachers these past 4 weeks. And friends, thank you for joining us. May
Thank
this
you.
be a Pesach of great liberation, body, mind, and
Right.
soul. Laila Tov.
Let's stay connected. Let's stay connected. Please feel free to jump off mute now and wish each other a Yeh Tov. Stay connected, everyone. And happy Passover.